Okay, so this race review has been long overdue. Seriously, um, I tried all week to stream it, and unfortunately, the internet just wouldn't cooperate for me. Um, was really tough. Internet was just going on and off in my house. It was crazy. Um, Thankfully, it's finally resolved. It's just finally being resolved, so hopefully it doesn't happen again. But it was really eating at me. It was really stressing me out. Eventually, I made the decision to just postpone this video because I was just not gonna skip a work day to record this video and just calling sick at work. I just wouldn't do that. Um, so that's why you guys see me just streaming this right now. If you're asking about the Nashville truck race that happened last night, I'm gonna try and post this review, try and stream that like immediately after. I'm just gonna have it on two separate videos. But anyways, I just want to get my thoughts on this Cup race at New Hampshire that happened last week out of the way. So just like Xfinity, the Cup qualifying was canceled due to rain. They still managed to hold a quick practice session though, so there's that. And also, just like the Xfinity race, the start of the Cup race was moved up to account for the threat of rain and the fact that New Hampshire does not have lights. The race started at around 2:30 p.m. So with no qualifying, the lineup was set by the metric formula. So Chase Elliott sat on the pole. Ryan Blaney, the winner of the previous race at Iowa, started second. William Byron third, and Christopher Bell fourth, who was the only car who didn't come out on the track during practice, funnily enough. Then Alex Bowman 5th, Joe Logano sat 6th, Truex 7th, Ross Chastain 8th, Brad Keselowski 9th, and Josh Berry 10th, followed by Daniel Suarez in 11th, then Ricky Stenhouse in 13th, Denny Hamlin in 14th, Todd Gilliland in 16th, Bubba Wallace 17th, Ty Gibbs 18th, Kyle Larson 19th, then Carson Olsenbart 20th. He was the fastest car in this short practice session. Then Justin Haley sat 24th, Corey LaJoie 26th, Austin Cindric 29th, Kyle Busch 30th, then Zane Smith in 34th. Spire Motorsports, they look really promising in practice as a whole. Zane Smith was the 5th fastest. I talk about Olsenbart being the fastest overall. Look, and Corey LaJoie too, he was the 11th fastest guy. So the 3 Spire cars were top 11 in practice. And then finally Ty Dillon in 36th, back in the 16 car for Colleague. So as soon as the race began, it was pretty tame at first. Most of this race was pretty tame. But as soon as the race began, it started sprinkling. I for sure thought this would be the caution out for rain, but little did we know, this was a sign of things to come, honestly. Fortunately, it was a light mist, so the race stayed green for a good while. As a matter of fact, this stage went green the whole way. So Chase Elliott started leading with Christopher Bell second and Logano third. Josh Berry moved up to 4th after starting 10th. And Daniel Suarez, after starting 11th, he just battled a very bouncy race car, especially in the corners. He ended up going a lap down, falling all the way down to 30th. Kyle Busch also fell a lap down, down to 33rd, not making any progress after starting deep in the field. So Chase Elliott, he continued to lead on to lap 42 when he lost the lead to Bell. And as soon as Bell got the lead, he started to do Christopher Bell things, started to do what he does at New Hampshire, pulling away to a 3-second lead on his way to the Stage 1 win. Logano managed to get by Elliott on the last lap of the stage, so he got second. Elliott third, Blaney fourth, Josh Berry fifth, then Martin Truex, Hamlin, Chastain, Reddick, and Alex Bowman round out the top 10 for stage points. Reddick and Bowman, they barely got the final 2 spots over Ty Gibbs in a 3-wide battle for 9th too. But yeah, stage 1 was just pretty tame. We won to pit road. The leaders, everyone pitted for 4 tires except Todd Gilliland and Michael McDowell. They took 2 tires only, and they moved into the top 10 as a result. McDowell, however, got penalized for removing equipment, so this strategy only worked out for one of those front row motorsports guys. But Christopher Bell, he won the race of pit road over Joe Logano, with Truex moving up to 3rd, Elliott dropping to 5th, Blaney dropping to 6th, Austin Cindric also got penalized for speeding, and he got gotten the free pass too, by the way. So we go to stage 2, and Christopher Bell pulls away to the lead again, with Josh Berry moving up to second this time, with Truex third, and Elliott falling to 7th after getting passed by Truex, Berry, Hamlin, and Blaney. And once again, just like in stage 1, nothing of note happens other than both Kyle Busch and Suarez falling 2 laps down. The race stays green until green flag pit stops begin on lap 120. Austin Cindric starts the cycle, followed by Tyler Reddick, Bubba, Larson, Logano, Truex, Berry, Blaney, and Elliott. And this eventually brings the leader Bell down pit road, along with Gibbs and Alex Bowman, giving the lead over to Todd Gilliland, and him, Keselowski, Stenhouse, Gragson, Briscoe, and McDowell. Those guys are yet to pit. Pretty clear they were trying to extend their fuel window for as much as possible. Also remember, both McDowell and Gilliland, they only took 2 right side tires on their first pit stop. So they have essentially spent 130 plus laps on those left side tires they started the race with. And fortunately for them, the caution did come out for a Daniel Hemrick spin on lap 142. So we go to pit road. Most of the leaders pit, including Gilliland and McDowell, who took 4 fresh tires after going almost half the race on those 2 left sides. Only Truex and Bell took 2 tires this time. Also, Alex Bowman with a long pit stop due to smoke coming out of the exhaust pipes. The team went under the hood and eventually took into the garage and out of the race, as it was determined that this was indeed an engine failure, and it was terminal. So, Hocevar got penalized for pitting outside the box, while Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, and Corey LaJoie stayed out. This leads us into the restart, where Hamlin is now the leader, holding off Logano, while his JGR teammates Truex and Bell make quick work of LaJoie to move up to 3rd and 4th respectively. This action is halted by a quick caution for Kyle Busch getting loose underneath Noah Gragson and spinning both of them out. The 8 car, of course, ends with significant damage on the rear end, and the downward spiral continues. So, with the threat of rain looming, the aggressiveness and intensity ramps up in this next restart. A lot of 3 wide racing in the mid-pack. They probably went 4 wide for a split second too, but up front though, it's JGR versus Penske. Hamlin leads, Truex second, then Logano, Bell, and Blaney in the top 5. All of them JGR cars, 3 of them being JGR cars, and then Logano and Blaney being Penske guys. And they stayed that way until the stage end. Stage 2 went green the rest of the way, despite some close calls courtesy of Corey LaJoie. First with Todd Gilliland and Josh Berry, and then with William Byron a few laps later. Both of these incidents happened coming off of turn 2, and they almost brought out the caution if those guys ended up going sideways. So Joe Gibbs and Penske, they sweep the top 5 spots. Again, Hamlin won the stage, Truex second, Logano third, Bell fourth, Blaney fifth. And then behind them, Todd Gilliland in 6th, Kyle Larson in 7th, Josh Berry, Chase Elliott, and Ross Chastain rounding out the top 10. So, we go to pit road, and once again, like I said, rain is about to fall on the track. Everyone knows it. So we see a good bunch of strategy. Most of the leaders pit. Only Reddick and McDowell stay out. Larson wins the race of pit road with 2 tires, along with Gilliland, Gragson, Cindric, and Harrison Burton. And then everyone else takes 4 tires. Truex with a disaster pit stop. The right rear tire was not tightened properly, and the team had to just come back around to address the issue before moving on to the left side. He dropped all the way down to 26. And we go to stage 3, and as soon as the stage goes green, we got a caution. Joey Logano locks the left front tire up. He drifted into Chase Elliott, entering turn 1 and spun him out. Both cars with significant damage, but more so on the 22, who really needed a great points day to put himself above the cut line. Even with the massive stage point haul, he won't even make up that much ground on the rest of the bubble drivers if he finishes below 30th. So yeah, really tough break for Logano. So we go to the restart, and there is another caution. Corey LaJoie getting into it with Ryan Preece, once again coming off of turn 2. He thought he was clear ahead of the 41, but turns out he wasn't, got put in the wall and spun out. And the rain is looming closer and closer. And it didn't help matters either that on the next restart, we did see some green flag action with Reddick holding the lead despite Larson and Hamlin coming in hot behind him. 11 and 5, they end up battling for second, allowing Reddick to pull away. This battle ends with Hamlin using Larson up off of turn 4. He had already used him up for the past 1 or 2 laps. But yeah, it didn't help matters that as soon as he made the pass, another caution came out for Truex getting spun out in turn 4 by Keselowski. Another winnable race for the 19 team has gone down the drain due to poor execution on pit road and hanging around with the squirrels a little too much in the back. So this leads us into yet another restart, where this time it's Ryan Blaney challenging the Toyotas of Tyler Reddick and Denny Hamlin for the lead. But once again, another caution comes out for Kyle Busch getting spun out by Ryan Preece, or rather, he got sideways. Ryan Preece got in sideways and Stenhouse just finished the job. It was a joint effort. But all of these cautions eventually, they add up and they cause the rain to show up, halting the race with 80 to go. It was at first a light sprinkle though, and there was a possibility that the wet weather tires could be used should the race be resumed. And despite the rain sprinkle becoming more of a rain shower, 3 to 4, but eventually the rain sprinkle becomes a rain shower, and we also have like 3 to 4 lightning strikes in the vicinity. But still, NASCAR, they are committed to resuming the race. They do not call it right then and there. We all thought the race was going to be called, and they do. This is not a Coca-Cola 600 situation. NASCAR actually follows through on a track with no lights too. So they dried the track up a little bit, and they had the teams put on the wet weather tires, and they actually resumed the race after a 2-hour rain delay. I really thought the race was going to be called right then and there, but to NASCAR's credit, they actually gave it their best. And in the pace laps, but unfortunately, on the pace laps before the restart, we get a taste of how crazy this race will look like. Of course, we got Corey LaJoie spinning, but I say unfortunate because, the biggest story was Kyle Busch. He crashed out under caution after suffering a part failure in turns 3 and 4. Just when you think it cannot get any worse than this for him, it just does. Just a differential failure at Iowa that knocks him out of the race, getting spun out while just on pace for a top 10 finish at Sonoma, and then this he just did not come to play at New Hampshire. That 18 just did not come to play at New Hampshire, and now he just spins out. The incident with Gragson, falling 2 laps down, and then once he gets the free pass, he gets spun out, and then just when the race is about to resume with the wet weather tires, he suffers a part failure in turns 3 and 4, and he ends up just crashing out. Wow. And from the outset, eventually the race resumes with the wet weather tires, and from the outset, these cars are on edge. Because remember, New Hampshire is the biggest track by far where these wet weather tires have been run. All of the other tracks up until now, they have been short tracks. Martinsville, North Wilkesboro, Richmond. New Hampshire is an intermediate track, by length. But it's still a flat track, and you run it like a short track. So because of that, NASCAR, they deemed it an appropriate track for wet weather tires, kinda. We even see cars all over the place, passing on the apron, Blaney on the restart. We saw Blaney on the restart going down the apron. That's how he got up to second. We also see drivers go close to the wall, like Christopher Bell. That's how he took second away from Blaney later on. But all of this was happening behind the leader, Tyler Reddick, who was running like a tractor. I kid you not. Lap times were 4 to 5 seconds slower. A part of that was because, drivers not wanting to push the issue, but also you do not want to get those tires too hot, otherwise the car becomes undrivable. And it's because of that last part where we see drivers go over puddles of water to cool off the tires, not only under caution but also on during green. They go like way down in the inside safer barrier on the front stretch where there are like puddles to cool off the tires. I mean, have you ever? Other big movers throughout the race, the Stewart-Haas teammates of Barry and Ryan Preece, they gained 10 spots each before the next caution came out for Chastain getting spun out in turns 3 and 4 by Haley. But in that short green flag run, that statement had already been made. Like, the ending of this race was going to be crazy. These last 80 laps or so, they were going to be crazy. So we go to the restart again, and this time Christopher Bell gets the lead, leaving Reddick to hold off Ryan Blaney and Larson for second, but he eventually gets past and he drops all the way back to fifth. But by then, Bell had pulled away to like a 3-second lead. That's no problem for Ryan Blaney though, as he was able to cut the lead down to 1.5 seconds before another caution came out for another Corey LaJoie split in turn 1. This leads us to another restart where Bell continues to hold the lead over Blaney when another caution comes out a couple laps later for Noah Gragson getting loose underneath Bubba, sparking a multi-car crash collecting the 23, as well as Austin Dillon, Austin Cindric, Eric Jones, and John Hunter Nemechek. Bubba Wallace with a ton of damage. He eventually DNFs out of this race. And in frustration, he parked his car in front of Gragson's pit stall out of frustration. It's understandable. His frustration is understandable, as he's another one of those bubble drivers fighting for a playoff spot against Joey Logano and Kyle Busch. He could have gotten fined though. I don't think he did. I didn't see any reports of Bubba Wallace getting fined for that or even getting a warning. But in my opinion, but because again, and honestly, I think that was a good call, because in my opinion, what Bubba Wallace did, it wasn't as egregious as what Kurt Busch did back in 2007. Like, there were not any crew members over the wall, okay? And that's what honestly NASCAR looks at when dishing out these penalties is, do they harm other people? Because when crew members come into play, that's where NASCAR, they start to intervene. So, yeah, what Bubba Wallace did, it was understandable, and I also don't think it was as egregious as what Kurt Busch did back in 2007 with Tony Stewart at Dover. You know which incident I'm talking about. Like, NASCAR could take a look at it, but I don't think it would result in a fine. I never thought it would result in a fine. So yeah, we go to pit road now. Everyone pits for a fresh set of wets, because the average lifespan of these wet weather tires are 25 to 35 laps. You also got to consider the fact that the track is drying and it's becoming slicker too, and these tires wear out faster on the dry surface. These are non-competitive pit stops. Again, I don't like the hand holding on NASCAR's part, but in their defense, this is uncharted territory, so I'll let it slide for now. Okay? So again, we go to the restart. This restart takes us to 27 to go. With more rain looming, as well as darkness, the aggression picks up once again. Bell continues to lead. Blaney moves up to second. Larson third. And Michael McDowell, he passes Tyler Reddick for fourth. Drivers start struggling with handling on this green flag run as the track is starting to dry out, which starts wearing the wet weather tires down faster. This eventually culminates in the next caution of the race, with Carson Hocevar spinning out in turn 3 after battling what was an ill-handling car for the last 2 laps. And now we got a serious dilemma here. There's only one set of wet weather tires left, but the drivers are starting to radio that the track is dry enough to put the slicks back on. However, NASCAR is reluctant, saying that the track is not dry enough, but they also would not let teams put on a new set of wet weather tires, at least not initially. But eventually more drivers start complaining, saying that if they won't let them change tires now, they might as well call the race, since they feel it's unsafe to drive on worn, wet tires on a drying track. And in the end, NASCAR decides to cave in and have all drivers pit and put their final set of wet weather tires for the final few laps of the race. So that was just... NASCAR almost lost control of the race right there. And again, this just goes to a point that this is just a problem of a major point that I'm just gonna be talking after I finish this race review, because I just didn't like how NASCAR just had all of the power. NASCAR officiating just dictated how the strategy will flow, like when to put the wets, when to put the dries. I just was not a big fan of that. But yeah, everyone is all set to go for the final stretch. Like, I believe it was like 10 to go at that point. As soon as the race restarts, McDowell sends it into turn 1 for second, and he ends up spinning himself and Ryan Blaney out. Another chance at a win, unlocking himself into the playoffs. He goes up in smoke for McDowell, just like that. So we got another restart, and this time it's the two Stewart-Haas racing cars of Josh Berry and Chase Briscoe behind Bell, trying to give Chase to the 20, with the playoff spot on the line for both of them too. Unfortunately, it's not over yet, as Keselowski spins out in turn 1, and despite NASCAR trying to hold out on throwing the caution for about as much as they can, the 6th car does not refire on time, and the yellow is eventually thrown. And this takes us into overtime. This takes the race into overtime, where Christopher Bell, he once again pulls away, while Josh Berry and Chase Briscoe stay side by side for second, all the way through to win at New Hampshire and complete the weekend sweep for the first time in his career. Because remember, he won the Xfinity race yesterday. So he now has 7 wins total. I'm talking about Christopher Bell here. He has 7 wins total across all 3 National Series at New Hampshire. He got the truck race in 2017. Then he went 4-4-4 in Xfinity, winning 2018, 2019, 2021, and the previous race. And then the race on Saturday at New Hampshire in Xfinity. And now his second Cup win at the track, because he also won in 2022. And not only that, when he doesn't win, he gets finished second in all but 2 starts at this track. This guy just owns New Hampshire. And good for him too. A nice little redemption for him after he, accidentally revealed who the new driver of the 19 would be. That was a nice little redemption for him too on that. This is also his 3rd win of the season, joining William Byron, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Larson as this season, as not only the only 3-time winners this season, but also the only 4 multi-time winners so far. So you're noticing a pattern here, right? Byron is a Hendrick driver, Hamlin is a Gibbs driver, Larson a Hendrick driver, Christopher Bell a Gibbs driver. Could we see another Hendrick-Gibbs Championship 4 battle like we saw in 2021? I mean, there's also Chase Elliott to consider, who is tied with Larson for the points lead after this race, who is another Hendrick driver. But if we're talking about wins only, Byron, Hamlin, Larson, and Bell could very well be the Championship 4. But also, again, Elliott is a points leader, so you cannot, anyone who ends up being the regular season points leader, you cannot take him away from the Championship 4. So anyways, let's take a look at the notable finishing results, because this finish with the wet weather tires, they definitely jumbled up the running order by quite a lot. So Bell won the race. Chase Briscoe and Josh Berry 2nd and 3rd, right behind him. A great run for Stewart-Haas Racing at the end. Kyle Larson 4th, like I said. He tied Chase Elliott for the points lead. Chris Buescher 5th. Great job for Buescher. Buescher was kind of lost in this race. I didn't even realize where Buescher was until he ended up crossing the finish line in 5th. Tyler Reddick finishes 6th. He would have won the race if it was called 2 to 3 hours ago. Stenhouse finishes 7th. Back-to-back top 10s for him. Great job. John Hunter Nemechek taking 8th. First top 10 finishing. Who knows how long. Martin Truex finishes 9th. Great bounce back from him after getting spun out. And this happened a few moments before the rain came out, so great bounce back for him too. Ross Chastain finishes 10th. Ryan Preece finishes 11th. So you got the three of the 4 Stewart-Haas racing cars in the top 11. Great job. Also, Todd Gilliland finishes 12th. Another top 20 finish for that 38 team. They got stage points too. They have been quietly consistent as of late. They're quietly putting themselves, like, they're way back on the playoff bubble, but like top 20 in points at this point of the season is pretty doable. Eric Jones in 13th. Legacy Motor Club, another team with solid finishes across the board. 8th for John Hunter, 13th for Eric Jones. Then Harrison Burton 14th. Michael McDowell finished 15th. Great bounce back after his late incident with Ryan Blaney. Then Ty Gibbs 16th. Carson Hocevar 17th. Chase Elliott in 18th. This may not be much. This may not mean much, but this finish keeps his top 20 streak alive. Something that would have been impossible, that would not have been possible if the race was called for rain. because he would have finished 21st if that was the case. Ty Dillon also finishes 20th. Nice little top 20 finish there for Kaulig Racing. Speaking of 21st, Daniel Suarez finished 21st after battling an ill-handling car all race long. He came just one position shy of a top 20. As a Suarez fan, I'll take it. He was running terrible all race long. He was running worse than 30th, as a matter of fact. Also, shout out to Suarez for officially becoming a USA citizen. So cool. Kaz Grala finishes 22nd. Denny Hamlin 24th. He simply just struggled with the wet weather tires. And this is his third straight finish outside of the top 20 as well, because he just blew the engine at Sonoma. Then he, the crash at Iowa with Larson. But even before that, he was like running really, really bad. He was like running outside the top 30. He even fell a lap down. And now at New Hampshire, after winning a stage and he was in contention for the win, those wet weather tires, he just struggled. He had nowhere to go but backwards. Ryan Blaney 25th after the incident with McDowell. Byron 26 as well. I don't think I saw much of Byron throughout this the entire race. Noah Gragson 27th because of the incident with Bubba Wallace. Brad Keselowski 28th. He spun out late. Justin Haley 29th. I don't know what the fuck happened to him. It seemed like he just plummeted late in the race, and it was such a damn shame too, because he was running like top 5, top 10 with the wet weather tires, and was like a top 20 car all race long too. Such a damn shame. Joe Logano finishes 32nd. Despite the bad result, he is now above the cut line because of the late crash that took Bubba out, and also the stage point haul that he got. He's now above the cut line now. Bubba Wallace, he finished 34th. He now drops below the cut line. Austin Dillon 33rd. He also DNF because of the incident with Gragson. At least he finished better than Kyle Busch, who finished 35th. Man, RCR is just in a terrible spot. But more than that, we may have just witnessed the downfall of Kyle Busch, because these last 4 races, they have just been absolute hell. I know Gateway, the Gateway thing was kind of his fault because he crowded Larson all the way down to the rumble strips and he got spun out because of that. But the Chastain incident at Sonoma, when he was like in the top 10, I know he ran out of fuel, so it's very possible he wouldn't have, finished in the top 10 anyways. But him getting spun out by Chastain, that was just like insult to injury at that point. You also have the incident at Iowa. Not really the incident, but the part failure at Iowa, where he eventually had to take it to the garage, and that was just like out of nowhere that happened too. And now New Hampshire, this was overall, and even before all of these incidents, he was just barely running inside the top 30. This was like his worst race overall, like on pace alone. This was overall his worst race since Martinsville of 2022, the fall of 2022. His second to last race with Joe Gibbs Racing. I have never seen Kyle Busch run this bad since then, but leave it to RCR to just screw it up, man. They just, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes with RCR. I know like Andy Petrie, he retired effective immediately, which is just it just encapsulates the whole situation of how RCR is this season. I just don't want to talk about it. I just don't want to talk about it because watching Kyle Busch, just his downfall, it's just making me sad, honestly. And finally, Alex Bowman in 36. He finishes dead last due to an engine failure. And by the way, this is the first time Alex Bowman has suffered an engine failure in his Hendrick Motorsports career too, or a mechanical failure of any kind. Just really crazy. So, gonna offer my final thoughts on this race. I'm not gonna lie, the outlook of this race, it seemed pretty bleak. I really thought this was gonna be another moment of poor decision making by NASCAR. Like, why were they waiting out the rain so much when they could have run the wet weather tires until the rain picked up or there was a lightning strike? I was even hearing rumblings of NASCAR did not wanting to go through with it because they thought it wouldn't matter if the race was going to be called anyways. As the NBC broadcast put it, NASCAR is more willing to run wet weather tires to start the race or to get to a point where the race becomes official, either halfway or the end of stage 2, whichever comes first. But they're not going to run wet weather tires to end the race, especially if the forecast is poor and there is a bigger storm coming. If they feel the race is going to be called anyways, they're not going to bother. I personally disagree with that sentiment, especially if I was a fan that paid for tickets to watch the race in person. I would want to go and get the most out of my experience as a fan. Even if the race resumes only to get red flag later, at least NASCAR made an honest attempt to try and get the race done, to try and get there and try and go the distance. I would much rather see a race called with 50 laps to go rather than with 80 laps to go. That's just how I would feel if I was a fan of the track. If I was a fan that paid for tickets to go there. But obviously in the end, none of that mattered, as NASCAR waiting out the storm and putting on the wets ended up being the right call. I'll give it to them for once. They knew what they were doing for once. That being said, they have to stop dictating the flow of race strategy under these conditions. Yes, I know these were uncharted waters, this was unprecedented for them, but still. One of the main draws of racing is watching how drivers adapt to ever-changing track conditions. NASCAR should have just let the teams know that they're allowed to change wet weather tires if they wanted to, and they should have just left it at that. From that point on, let the teams figure it out on their own, just like how, Formula 1 teams, they do their race strategy on a wet track. Don't tell teams when they're allowed to change the tires, and don't tell the teams when they're allowed to change tires and when not, because then it forces them into a box of everyone doing the same. And how do you win races? A large factor that plays into that is honestly strategy, doing something different than the rest of the field to try and get the jump on everyone. But again, I'm not going to be too harsh this time. Like I said, this was the first time we saw the wet weather tires play a big part towards the end of the race. Because previously, if you look at all of the other races where we have run wet weather tires, Martinsville, North Wilkesboro, Richmond, even the Xfinity race at New Hampshire the previous day, they were all run to either get the race to a point where it became official or to get the race started, not to finish the race. So this was the first time we saw the wet weather tires play a big part towards the end of the race. And NASCAR, they didn't know what to do for the most part. And I am being literal here. With all of this crazy multi-groove racing, all the way down to the apron, we saw about half the field go over the commitment line on pit road in turn 4 and then merge back on the track like nothing happened, with 0 penalties. NASCAR, they just could not even enforce their own rules properly, and for once, I'm not gonna blame them, nor am I gonna be too harsh with them. I'm just happy they actually did not back down like they did at Charlotte, and they actually delivered on their promise to have this race go the distance. And even with all of these teams being put in a box, the racing ended up being fun. The wildest race I ever saw in New Hampshire when they put on the wet weather tires. There was like, as NASCAR Twitter will put it, 8 wide racing. So just for that, I'm giving this race a solid B. So, finally, driver of the day. There's quite a couple of candidates, honestly. Christopher Bell, obviously, for the weekend sweep. Could also go with Ricky Stenhouse. Back-to-back top 10 finishes for him. John Hunter Nemechek and Briscoe. You usually don't see these guys finishing as well as they do lately. But in the end, I decided to go with Josh Berry, because he has come alive this past couple of races. Starting to see him run the top 10 more often. And he was a top 10 car even before the wet weather tires came into play. He was running solidly in the top 10. And Ford as a whole, they have looked pretty strong too the past couple of races. Outside of Sonoma, and even then, you had Michael McDowell and Chris Buescher finish 2nd and 3rd at Sonoma. But even if you count Sonoma out, that's 3 of the last 4 races where Ford has looked pretty good, honestly. You had Penske winning at Gateway with Cindric after Blaney ran out of fuel, but Cindric was there to pick it up at least. Then Blaney got his own redemption at Iowa. And finally, we have New Hampshire, where the Penske cars were kind of like the only team for most of the race. Penske, Logano, and Blaney were the only drivers that could even hold a candle to Christopher Bell, aside from his JGR teammates, of course. And then late in the race, it looked like Berry and Briscoe, the Stewart-Haas racing duo, they could actually make something happen. At least until, that last caution that sent the race into overtime happened, and then Bell pulled away and won. But the Fords, they have come into their own, at least on the Cup Series side. Xfinity and trucks, that's another story. But yeah, speaking of the Truck Series, I'm gonna be wrapping up this video now. In about 20 minutes, I'm gonna do my review of the truck race at Nashville. So I can get back up to schedule on that front. And then after that, I guess I'll just sit back and watch the Xfinity race then. So yeah, yes, I'm just going to wrap this up. I'll see you guys in about 20 minutes for the truck race. For my thoughts on the truck race, that is.